Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Frew. I work at Metric Coffee, and you are listening to the Source Code Coffee Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We are coming to you live for the first time from the Fellow store in beautiful San Francisco. We've got a lovely, sunny, chilly day. Very much enjoying a break from the Chicago weather. And we are here serving coffee roasted by us at Metric. We've got a nice natural Ethiopia. And our incredible baker, Asia, has baked some vegan pastries using Briterfigures oat milk. And those are all available to you today at the Fellow Space. Come check us out. We are here been here since 7 a.m. We'll be here till 1, and then we'll do the same tomorrow. So we are here today doing a live version of the podcast that we have been very much enjoying producing at Metric. And I am joined by Brian Keeffe of Sightglass Coffee, a San Francisco native currently. I know you've been all around, and I want to hear your whole coffee story. We don't have to dive right into it, but
All right.
feel free to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your coffee story.
First off, thank you so much to Metric for inviting me. Gotta admit, I feel very, very humbled to be here. So appreciate that.
Yeah, glad to have you.
Thanks, man. I'm Brian Keeffe, and currently I'm the director of wholesale operations for Sightglass Coffee Roasters here in San Francisco, California. Actually, San Francisco is where I did start my coffee career. Colin, just a second ago, you and I were saying how we had a similar story.
Yes.
I grew up as a kid. My first memory of coffee actually has nothing to do with my father. It actually has to do with my mother. And I remember from a very young age always drinking her coffee in the morning. And from that moment, it kind of always sparked an interest of like, oh, I love this flavor. Anyway, we're not going to go all the way back to childhood here.
Oh, you can linger at any point for as long as you'd like. I appreciate it all.
Oh, dude, be careful. I'm very long-winded. But as a kid and as a teenager, I grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Involved with coffee culture on a level of that was where you went to hang out. Mm-hmm. There was one spot in Santa Cruz at the time that every single person, if you were into music, if you were into skateboarding, if you were really into punk rock culture, you hung out at the Santa Cruz Roasting Company.
There you go. Shout out.
Shout out right there, man. Anyway, there was a bench outside of the Santa Cruz Roasting Company, and that's where you would go spend countless hours loitering outside. I'm sure looking back now, I'm like, God, I didn't. Nothing for their business, I'm sure of it at all. Just a bunch of like 15-year-olds loitering, doing things they shouldn't be doing, and only spending $1.25 for like 8 hours.
Unlimited drip coffee, maybe? Was it something like that?
Oh yeah, dude. It was, what's funny is then always seeing Blue Bottle with their pour over bar, and I was like, hey man, that was at Santa Cruz Roasting Company way back in the day. But they had this pour over bar where you could pick any one of their coffees, and God, what were they even brewing in? Just these giant baskets, man, with these huge old filters in them. Mm-hmm. That's what it was, $1.25. Come on in, and I love it. Back then, people always go, you always drink black coffee? I was like, no way, man. I had like half a cup of half and half, and about 15 packets of sugar. It's 15.
Yep.
But I think that was my first introduction, actually, of like, oh, this is coffee, and this is how it's brewed. This is what goes on. Mm-hmm. But Panda years later, in the late '90s, back in 1998, I was going to school in San Francisco at San Francisco State. Shout out to any Gators out there. And cut my teeth at Pete's Coffee and Tea, oddly enough.
There you go.
In West Portal. Mm-hmm. And it was cool because when I walked into that store to apply, the manager at the time comes running out of the store. I was there applying with a buddy of mine. Actually, oddly, he's from Chicago. And she goes, "Which one of you is from Ben Lomond?" And I'm like, "What? hell does this lady know where Ben Lomond is? For those of you listening in, Ben Lomond is a small little town in the Santa Cruz Mountains that probably has a population of 3,000. I like raised my hand. I'm like, I am. And she oddly was from the town next door to me, and she was much older and was a San Francisco State student as well, and had been working for Pete's for a long time and managing that store, and it was really the only reason that I got hired there.
There you go.
Had like the local plug from far away.
Yep.
But anyway, that kind of that really did kickstart my coffee career, and there was a guy there that led my first cupping. I remember, I love coffee. This is cool. And what's this all about? Oh, this is about making drinks, meeting people, engaging, really cool staff. All the staff at the time were these great, just like counterculture folks that were into all sorts of killer music, and were artists, and were musicians, or were activists. So I felt like I really, really belonged. And there was one gentleman I worked with. He was this rockabilly guy who was also a realist painter. And he set up the first cupping that I ever did. And I vividly remember in the back of this Pete's store, his cupping bowl is laid out. The first time experiencing differences in coffee and having it laid out on like a regional basis. That guy's name was Steve Lee. He,
a former guest of the podcast.
Steve, if you're listening to this one, you're probably just laughing at yourself or kicking yourself or something right now. But no, he was a big influence, and he probably doesn't even know that he was. But I feel like without him leading that cupping and putting so much seriousness, because Steve Lee's a very, very serious guy.
Intense.
He really made it come to life. He made it come to life, and I think actually out of his seriousness is what made me want to like focus in and evaluate what it was that I was doing. And he really drove home like the importance of, are we allowed to swear?
Please.
Okay. He laid out the importance of like, hey man, if you fuck this up, you're fucking up all the work of all of these people before you.
Yeah.
And then he just went down the list of how did this get here to be in this form that we're drinking. And again, you know, Steve Lee, because he is so serious, I was just standing there like on guard, but it sunk in. And it stayed with me up until now. And that was such a turning point in my life. Granted, I didn't think I was going to make a career out of coffee.
Yeah.
In fact, I constantly tell people when they ask me like, how did you get to this job? Do you have an MBA? You know, were you a marketing major? And I'm like, man, I didn't even finish college. Which, to all the kids listening in college, like, please finish college.
Yeah, you should.
You should do it. But it was people like Steve Lee that like lit this fire in me and kept me engaged. And as I just kind of continued on with my own personal journeys, I never left coffee, and I, to this day, just feel forever grateful to the industry because it afforded me opportunities. It was an industry that gave me a career. It allowed me to meet people that I still am connected to this day. Actually met my wife in coffee at that Pete's location.
Wow.
In West Portal.
A lot happened at Pete's.
a lot happened at Pete's, man. A lot happened at Pete's. But from Pete's, I was able to kind of, you know, sink my teeth into, again, just coffee world and barista life. Met another amazing individual down in Santa Cruz. I had moved back down there and started managing one of their stores. And I got an opportunity to work on a farm, not a coffee farm, but an organic herb farm that was out there. But it was through a coffee connection. A woman that I worked with there, her husband was in the horticulture realm at UCSC. he managed a farm and he needed an assistant. And it was kind of so I split time between coffee and that, and really got a greater appreciation for what it was like to be a farmer, like day in and day out.
Yeah, if you're actually laboring in an agricultural field and then working with coffee, I bet it really made some connections with the
huge connections.
Amount of hard work that has to go into it. Backbreaking work. Yeah.
Hard work. The people that were doing it day in and day out. I was able to really work on my Spanish, which was great. And then, in terms of coffee, from there, migrated up to Portland, Oregon. And this would have been about 2005. And at the time, I didn't know about third wave. My background had been Pete's. But I was always curious, what was more, what was different. And as soon as you landed in Portland back in 2005, I mean, the first thing was, oh, you got to go to Stumptown.
Yeah.
You got to go to Stumptown. I'm like, what? This is the weirdest name in the world. What is Stumptown? And the first spot that I went to wasn't the original spot. It was the one on Belmont and 34th and Southeast. And I walked in and I was just like, what is this? It was just bizarre to see something that I'd never really seen before, something I hadn't felt like I hadn't quite experienced yet. I didn't even know what to order. I was like, these guys are all way too cooler than me. What's going on? But anyway, ordered an Americano, and it was just this like monumental moment where it was just like, oh my God, I've never tasted coffee, like this at all. And at that point, I had been kind of searching in coffee. Felt like I had exhausted what I wanted to do on a barista level. And when I say exhausted, what I mean is I felt a disconnection. And I really was searching for an understanding of how is coffee transformed? Not how is it extracted. How is it transformed? How is it that the Stumptowns of the world, that the Pete's of the world, how are all of these roasters transforming this seed? And so I was really itching to learn about roasting, I guess. I didn't really know it at the time. But it was just kind of this itch inside that I was like, there's this disconnection, and I want to know more. So it took me a little while before I was able to get an opportunity at Stumptown. But I actually have an old checkbook balance sheet. For those of those kids listening that don't have a checkbook or know what that is, that's how you used to pay for things way back in the day.
It's crazy.
It's nutty, man. But I still can go back and look at these checks that I would write to Stumptown to buy beats, and it was like $12.10, $9.50, and it's all laid out. And anyway, a little side note there is it was something funny that kind of stands out to me about coffee is really engaging with it. So anyway, I really wanted to get in on the ground of roasting, and I knew that was a very sought after position. And living in Portland too, that was just the pinnacle of where you could work.
Yeah.
It wasn't all the cool kids work there, but it was an incredible job. It was from a coffee realm. It was the highest place that you could go. From an employer standpoint, everybody that worked there spoke so highly of how well they were taken care of, what they were paid. Everybody worked really, really hard, and it was just this family. And so I knew that if I was going to get an opportunity, if anything, I had to get in at the roastery side of things.
Right.
And so I would ride my bike around the roastery a lot. And finally one day, my girlfriend at the time, who I had met at Pete's years ago, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, she had a friend who was the head retail manager of all the stores. And her friend had told her, hey, we're hiring in production. I know your boyfriend's looking to get in. So she told me, and right away I just rode my bike over immediately and like tracked somebody down and found them. And it was this guy, Glenn Eaton. He was the manager of the roastery at the time, and he ran the crew that did production and did delivery. And he was this old school messenger that had been a messenger for years in Texas and out in Portland as well. And I rolled up and I was super intimidated, and I was just like, oh my God, what's this guy gonna, there's no way I'm gonna get a job. Mm-hmm. And it was cool because he's like, are you the kid that has the bike with the Descendant sticker on it?
There you go.
He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. And that right there got me the job. I guess I'm kind of laying this out going, I got a job at Pete's because of where I grew up and randomly having a woman be from my same small town. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to get a job in the production side and fulfillment side of things at Stumptown because of a sticker that I had on my bike. And it was great. I fell in on the line and just bagged coffee forever. One of the coolest memories I have of that is this was when Ritual first started, and it was before Ritual was roasting their own coffee. And I felt this great connection because here I was, my home area in the Bay Area, having an attachment to this new city that I was in, Portland, mm-hmm. and there was this cool connection. And we were bagging hundreds and hundreds of pounds of coffee and sending it down to San Francisco. And at that time as well, Stumptown had very, very strict rules as to who they would wholesale coffee to. And back then, I don't think it was a rule that was written down, but it was the idea and the notion of we will not sell coffee to anyone outside the Portland metropolitan area. And it was all about freshness. It was like we can't ensure our levels of quality if we go outside of that. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm saying that just to be like, it was a very, very intimate setting. Yeah. And something that, is also very, very different now in the world.
I haven't, reach out if you are a roaster that's working that way, but I don't know. It doesn't really feel like anybody's doing that kind of thing anymore.
No, it was a thing of the past.
Yeah.
And, definitely at the time, it was something that totally drew me in just to the mm-hmm. idea of like craft, local, artisan, small. But my goal at Stumptown was I really wanted to learn about roasting. And so I was there 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. I was filling bags, trying to get in on the delivery side, and every spare moment that I had hanging out with the roasters. Mm-hmm. And every time that they were doing a cupping, trying to be involved, whether it was being able to participate or do you want me to set up? Do you want me to break down? Everything that I could do above and beyond, because I wanted to learn how to roast, but I wanted to learn more about the coffee. And so if I got the opportunity to roast, great. But if I was able to learn more about what was going on inside of that machine, that was what I really, really wanted. Right. And so was able to obviously align with a lot of the roasting staff there. Two folks in particular, one that definitely took me under their wing, Steve Kerbach, who I don't know what his title is right now, so sorry, Steve, but he's over at Kova Coffee now, mm-hmm. and he's most likely running the green department and all the quality assurance there. He definitely took me under his wing and knew how much of a passion I have for coffee, and a couple apprenticeships popped up within that first year of me working there. Mm-hmm. I did not get the first apprenticeship, and it really it beat me down. I was pretty deflated and thought, you know what, I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna go on to something else. Yeah. And fortunately enough, another apprenticeship popped up right away, and I got it, and felt again just like forever grateful for that opportunity.
How do you feel about because I definitely had a similar enough experience to getting into roasting where it was like a kind of an all-consuming desire for a while, and I invested like so much time, and I have a tough time because I don't really I never want to tell somebody that is interested in roasting that like, oh yeah, all you got to do is show up and donate a bunch of extra time that your company's not going to pay you for, to really let everybody know how serious you are, and then no doubt you'll get the job eventually. If you keep doing that. Might be a year, might be 3. I never want to tell somebody that, but it kind of seems like the best way to do it. So I don't know how to justify like my ideals about labor versus the reality of how you find success.
Damn, dude, that is a really, really good question. I hear you, because I don't either. I'm like, oh, as much as I don't want to say like, oh, that's the reality. But talking through it right now, actually, it's reminding me of just like, I'm going to make an assumption here, but I think like how I was raised, and I'm assuming maybe how you were raised too. And it's just that I think it's really proving that you want to do a job well.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of like watching a clock or how much am I getting paid for this, that's not a part of the equation at that point in time.
No.
And it's something that I think back on too, that I loved so much about a lot of my early days in coffee. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about notoriety. It wasn't even about making friends. It was, I loved this thing so much. Mm-hmm. Or for instance, pouring in those extra hours, it was, this is the job that needs to get done. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do it regardless.
Yeah.
And it was great to like work alongside with other people too. For instance, on the production side, all of a sudden you have a crazy big order. It was never a question of like, oh my God, I've got to stay extra hours. It was like, all right, we're all binding together here.
Yep.
And we're going to crank this out. Because whoever this person was that ordered this is awesome, because that many more people are going to get to taste what we do. Mm-hmm. And what we do is the best. So there was this idea and this notion, and you were like a part of this. You were a part of this team.
Yep.
You were part of this thing. And the roasters were throwing in extra hours. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The people on the wholesale side were throwing in extra hours to expose that many more people to what you were doing.
Yeah.
The fulfillment side is pouring in that many more hours, stickering those bags, filling those bags, packaging that stuff. So it felt like that's just teamwork. Mm-hmm. And but you should get paid for it.
Yeah. It's you should get paid for it, but also it is, yeah, I think you touched on a good point there. The idea is you should want to really invest yourself into your work. That's sort of what this type of, we're not just taking green coffee and processing it into roasted coffee. That's like a far simpler endeavor than what we're trying to do, which is, whether it's a company that is focusing like really hard on, social equity, or on developing, mutually beneficial relationships with producer groups in a developing region of Honduras. Like, there's a lot of really important work that's going on, and I think it's not, a lot of the decisions are not like, we're doing this because it makes us our set amount of money. Like, most of us are not like money driven first.
No, not at all. I love the idea and the notion though of like, it still is critically important that as even when companies start, as they start and as they grow, the idea of taking care of their employees, and that's something that always needs to be evaluated and reevaluated. Mm-hmm. And hopefully all of us in positions of power can listen to the employees and be able to hear where they're being taken care of, or if they're not, and how that can be done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be done from a financial standpoint. Sometimes it can't.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think any of us that are in coffee right now, none of us did it for the money at all. But yeah, if somebody was to come to me and be like, hey man, I really want to learn to roast. yeah, what would I be able to, kind of tell them or offer them? And I think that willingness and that desire, not to give free labor, but you said showing that that's something that you want.
Yeah.
Why do you want that? What's it for? Because coffee, you can't be selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the best things, actually, that Steve Kerbach and another gentleman, Jim Kelso at Stumptown, really impressed upon me. I remember sitting down in that Belmont Cafe about 5:30 in the morning with a notebook, and that was my first day of apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. I was like, I thought we were going to be behind the machine, And Steve's just giving me philosophies, and the thing that he impressed upon me was, if you do your job correctly, no one will know that you touched the coffee. And it was this notion of, like, again, humility mm-hmm. and modesty. Don't go into this wanting to be this star roaster that gets written about and thrown up all over the stage. If you believe in this and you do your job effectively, what you're doing is you're bringing to life all the hard work that went on at the sourcing level until it got to you. And then from there, it doesn't end. From there, it's up to the individual that's extracting it. Mm-hmm. And if they do their job correctly, it's not about them. I was like, whoa. Because I kept thinking, like, oh, this is so cool, and I'm going to get to make it taste this way, and I'm going to be able to manipulate, what happens inside of that machine, and, mm-hmm. like, I'm going to make it sparkle more than this other person. And hearing him start out that apprenticeship with that philosophy, it goes back to, like, that first cupping with Steve Lee. It's not about me, and learn that. And you have an important critical role, and take it seriously. Mm-hmm. And take it seriously, and if you take it seriously and make it not about you, then you're going to be able to be a part of something that you truly believe in deep down inside. And I do feel that that's true with those people that really get engaged in coffee and have stayed in coffee, or those that are just getting into coffee now mm-hmm. and have that, like, hope of, I want to do this for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's jump forward just a little bit now. So with your current work that you're doing is you're managing wholesale for a roaster, Cyclass.
Yeah.
Great
totally.
Coffee. Love the work that's going on there.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop by this afternoon. I think we're gonna head over to the roastery on 7th. But
we're under construction right now, so take.
No. Never
it's
mind.
All good.
We're not going.
It's open. It's open, but it's under construction, so don't judge the mess.
Oh, that's all right. As I was saying before we started this, I think hearing the perspectives and stories of people who have been in this for a bit is super important. I will say that idea of, like, it being so important to, like, take the coffee seriously, to really lean into that, like, it's okay to take something as simple as a cup of coffee very seriously. I think that resonates really hard with me, because when I think about the people that have made an impact in my life in coffee, it's kind of the same type of thing, where it's been kind of a hard thing to engage with initially sometimes, because it can come off a little like I have a memory of cupping with somebody, and I just kind of was distracted and not really taking notes, and he called me out for it and was like, you don't have to come to these, but if you do, you need to engage and participate. Otherwise, you don't really need to be in the room. Okay. But it really meant a lot to me to get that feedback. Anyway, I think I'd really love to hear. So you work with wholesale clients.
Yeah.
Kind of. I'm curious to know, like, what you're seeing or where you think the industry's going right now, because we're in a place where it's sort of like, that's a lot of the conversations that I'm having with people is like, we're all kind of trying to figure out as companies, like, okay, a lot of us have a good idea of how we're roasting coffee, where we're going to get it from. These things are always developing too, and
Yeah.
always changing. But now the question is like, how do we go forward? What is there? What's next on the horizon for selling coffee to other people, for communicating a message in an effective way?
Yeah.
What are you finding success with?
Oh gosh, man. Yeah, that's a huge question. I gotta think on this a minute.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to not have some stale air here. So maybe as I'm thinking on it, I'll quick jump forward of like auto roasting into wholesale, because I think that's gonna feed into
Sure.
being able to find an answer for that question. Like I kind of said before, I'm so grateful. There have been so many opportunities presented to me, and I've been able to take advantage of them. And I guess I always feel indebted to the coffee world for that. It's not as if someone just handed it over. I did do the work, but I feel indebted to this thing that's so much bigger than me. And getting an opportunity in wholesale, I didn't really seek it out. I didn't think that was the next step for me. And I got a chance to come back to the Bay Area. I left Stumptown and went to 4 Barrel Coffee.
Yep. And so you were roasting at Stumptown until you moved back here?
Was roasting at Stumptown until about 2012.
Okay.
And then at that moment in time, 4 Barrel had been around for a couple years and was doing some really remarkable things, only focusing on single origin coffees. Definitely roasting style at that moment was a little bit unique in comparison to what else was out there. And when they approached me, anyway, I was like, oh, you guys need another roaster? You need a roaster on staff? And they were like, no, dude. We want you to come over to wholesale. And I was like, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I didn't graduate college.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we want you to talk about coffee. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And then they kind of laid out, they were like, you shouldn't be behind a machine. And I'm like thinking back all the times that I would get in trouble at Stumptown or talk to because I was busy obviously talking to people. I was like, oh, guilty. I was the one that if you walked into the roastery, as just a regular person, I'd be like, hey, come on in, let me show you what's going on. And
I can tell you probably weren't the roaster that was like refusing to talk to anybody or have anybody in the space.
No, yeah. I would take all the training tours and all the other tours, and it was what I liked to do. It was enjoyable. And so given the opportunity to come into wholesale was really, really great because it gave me an opportunity to meet with all sorts of different customers. And I guess like where I'm going with this long-winded tale is that, there's the sales side of it, but the philosophy that I was able to adapt and then mold who I wanted to be and then take with me moving forward was not really from a sales angle of just wanting to sell something. I got to engage with folks that were small business owners, creating their dreams, bringing something to life, and learning about them, learning about the communities that they were in, going into office spaces, as silly as it sounds, and asking, why are these offices paying a premium for their employees? And then learning more about maybe that company and what that company's ethos was, and they're not brewing it and selling it, they're just giving it to people. What's that about and what is that tied to? And seeing that, the company that I work for can engage with and can be so much bigger than itself by aligning with folks that are doing business on a similar level, whether it's from quality to like business ethics,
Mm-hmm.
to sustainability, and then seeing this major impact that had on the world that I loved, the world that I was indebted to, the world that had given me a career,
Mm-hmm.
the world that my children now only know about me, that
Yeah.
I do coffee. So that was what wholesale became to me and what sales became to me. Everybody that I've worked with or every boss that I've had also knows that I'm the first one to say I'm not a salesman, and that's the worst pitch that you can give in an interview applying for a sales role, because then they're always asking you know what this job is, right? And I'm like, what I mean is I want to talk about what it is that we're doing, and I want to find people that are inspired by that, and I want to help guide them and teach them as best as we can about what it is that we're doing so that they can fall in love with coffee the same way that I did, the same way that you did, the same way that every person probably listening to this podcast did. To me, that's success in sales. That's success in wholesale.
That's a beautiful, beautiful perspective. I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I think we've all experienced the opposite of that. And I don't need to talk about where that is and how that's happened, inside of our industry. I think that can happen anywhere.
I mean, it's just common because sales are essential. You have to be selling the product that you're making.
You have to be selling the product that you're making.
Yeah, and it's easier to find somebody who's interested in, a healthy commission and finding ways to grow that than it is to find somebody like you who is motivated by the actual product.
Yeah.
So.
I honestly do think that that's where our industry is going right now. That preciousness that I was talking about that has existed with coffee, I feel like went through a moment of reaching out to a larger audience. I think with that, some fraying happened, and there's been a little bit of lost sight of, the ethos behind what it is that we're doing. But what I am super hopeful for, and I see happening now, is continuing to try and bring that story to life. Trying to be able to bring it to life for those that aren't involved in coffee, and doing it in a very unpretentious manner. Showing people that, there's still people that are experiencing coffee for the first time that don't even know where it came from. And so what I feel super hopeful for, and I see happening, is I see that coming to life so much more today than it did 20 years ago, and coming to life in a way that's approachable. I think that something, like what we're doing right now in the industry can be unapproachable at times because it's new and it's different, and it can be kind of scary and intimidating.
Yeah, we take it very seriously, and we have a lot of information about it. And
Yeah,
if you're coming in that green, then good luck.
Exactly, like good luck. And what I see us emerging out of is sort of like that preciousness, that if you don't have that preciousness, you can't enjoy it. And I see us softening in a way that is becoming so much more approachable. And I also see it like feeding back into a smaller level. More roasters popping up that want to like put their stamp on not just coffee, but like their community. Hey man, this is the city or this is the town that I grow up in, and I want to bring this thing that I love to it, and I want to touch upon all these great, amazing aspects that are happening inside of my city. And I see that really kind of like driving a lot of the future right now of coffee. And in some ways, I see it like getting almost a little bit more micro in order for it to get macro.
That's an exciting perspective. I dig it. I'm encouraged by all of this. This is good. Sometimes I get in the space of like when I don't exactly see it, I'm like, well, maybe it's over. Maybe we're done. I don't know, but I don't think so. I mean, it really has just become so much more common, and with all these smaller roasters, the access to information is, so much wider than it was 15 years ago. If there's
it's
amazing resources.
It's incredible, and again, I'm all for it. I'm all for the fact that if you are someone that's green or new to coffee or getting into it or somewhat interested, there's all the information that's out there. It's remarkable. The fact that you could just absorb everything about coffee right now in a way that you couldn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's just going to make us all that much more better the more that we can give out to everybody else around us. And I see that happening more. My hope is that as like a coffee collective, we can continue to inspire each other as roasters and find ways to collaborate. This is a prime example of being able to showcase, true collaboration of roasting, pastry, alternative milk, equipment inside of the coffee realm. I mean, being able to have multiple businesses together working and exposing the public to so many different spectrums is pretty remarkable.
It is.
Yeah. I often look at the beer world, and one of the things that I love, and I don't know anything about beer. I don't know shit about beer. I enjoy drinking it.
Yeah.
But from an outside perspective, I see so many crossover and collaborations with different breweries, and I'm just like, I'm really inspired by that. And I'm like, man, how interesting, like that competitiveness is kind of taken away. Once again, of like wanting to prove yourself and only yourself. And it's great to sort of like resonate inside of the world that is bigger than you, that like steps out of individual roasting companies. And I feel pretty hopeful and inspired by that I see that happening inside of coffee, I don't know if that's going to be our like fourth wave stepping into the world, but I see that happening in a way that it probably hasn't happened in the past. And how do roasters come together and share like a continuous theme and message and show people that we're all special and unique in what we're doing, and we're very intent and have a purpose behind it. But like, we're also this larger community. And how can we help expose people to that larger community and help them find what it is that they like and love about coffee?
Wow. I think I'm going to have us wrap it up there. That's a closing thought. Brian, thanks so much for sitting down with me today. This has been great.
Colin, absolutely. Again, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Metric, for having me. Hope I didn't bore everybody too much with my life of coffee there.
I doubt you did. Not me. I'm happy. So
that's all that matters.
Yeah, please. I hope to see you in Chicago soon. If you ever are there, you're welcome. You're a friend. Come by.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And you've been listening to the Source Code Coffee Podcast.